Today, we have an opportunity to learn from a seasoned professional in the computer software industry. Mr. Travis Quinn lives in Utah with his wife and his 4 children. Travis is a director of sales for Adobe Inc., a multinational computer software company. Travis has been in sales for over 20 years. He has been doing enterprise sales for the past 13 years at Adobe. 7 of those years have been in leadership roles. Travis has navigated sales cycles at some of the largest companies in the world, including Amazon, Walmart, Costco, Marriott, Hilton, McDonald's, Delta, Johnson & Johnson, and many others. He also enjoys working with and learning from other software sales professionals. Working in a leadership role for a multi-billion-dollar sales software company introduces new challenges every day. Travis takes great pride in creatively solving problems related to those challenges to ensure his team and company continue to succeed. Outside of work, Travis likes to spend his time with his family. He enjoys supporting his children in their extracurricular activities, competing in anything with anyone, and enjoys the great outdoors. So welcome, Mr. Travis Quinn.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. Those bios always make me feel way more accomplished than I normally feel. So that's great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your willingness to share your expert advice with our viewers. Our goal, of course, is to provide guidance to young adults that are either exploring various careers or ready to jumpstart a career. So Travis, tell us about your own career path and what's helped you to become so successful in your industry.
Sure. Yeah, so as you mentioned in the intro, I'm in sales leadership at a software company. And I started sales 20 years ago. So, I got into college and I needed to make money and I wanted time flexibility. The more I looked around at, at that time, this will date how old I am, $6, $7 an hour jobs, the more I realized I didn't want to do that on time schedules. And so I had a friend that actually lived below me in my apartment complex who had a steak business and sold steak door to door. So we had a freezer van and all these things. And he said, you should come try this. So I did. And I did pretty well at it, and I could make a lot of money in a short period of time versus my other options. And so, I'd go out every 2 weeks when I needed to make rent or needed to, pay for other things, and would sell steak door to door, which was painful, but again, resolved a lot of my problems and allowed me to keep myself free. So that's where I started in sales, and I learned quickly that there's more money in sales than a lot of other professions, and I just stayed on that path. So I did a handful of jobs in college related to sales, most of them commission only, right? So you're completely betting on yourself. And yeah, I did summer sales for alarm company one summer, and then I got out of school and I had done an internship for a friend of mine who owned at the time the very beginning of what you'd call the NBA minor league. So the NBA development league at the time, now it's called the G League. And he was bringing a team to Utah, asked me if I wanted to run sales. And so I spent a year with him and a couple other folks building out the strategy and what we were going to do. And then did 2 years in that business because I always dreamed of being in sports, and learned pretty quickly that I'd much rather own tickets than sit in an arena from 7 a.m. till 12 midnight on game days and be running around like crazy working versus actually watching games. So after 3 years in that world, I moved on, and there was a startup company in Utah called Omniture that I honestly didn't know much about, and my friends kept trying to get me to come over there. I'd see billboards and I honestly had no idea what they did. So I went and interviewed, got a job in a really entry level position, and then kind of grew into the organization. After about a year and a half, we got bought by Adobe, and I'm still there today. So that's kind of a very high level look at my career and how I got into sales. And a lot of it's been dumb luck, like the whole Omniture thing, where I really I really didn't even know what I was getting into, and it's just worked out. So that's a high level. We can go deeper into that as we talk further.
Well, it sounds like you've seized the challenges, you've seized the opportunities as they've come up, and I think that's great. So Travis, tell us about the team that you manage.
Sure. So we have a team of about 30 folks. I have a handful of managers that work for me, and then outside enterprise sales people who own the selling process. We call my two groups kind of hunters and farmers, right? So outside of that, I have a group that manages customer success and then upsell. So I have both sides where we're selling into really a variety of companies now, and this has kind of changed over the years, but specifically right now, idea is we have a group of accounts that own or spend about $250,000 to $1 million in our digital experience business, and our job is to take them and grow them into larger accounts. And so that's the model. Like the folks that don't own our products that we sell into those with my hunting team. The farming team manage the current customers that have install base with us, and their job is to make sure they're happy, renew them as that comes up, and then also kind of upsell and cross-sell to help those companies reach their business objectives by adding new technology.
Great. Well, it sounds like you have a very busy job.
It's busy and it's new. I mean, it's kind of a startup within Adobe. We, again, like I said, we have challenges every day. So like this year, one of the challenges from the top down was we make all these acquisitions, and within those acquisitions, we're very much a margin focused company. Any large enterprise companies shifts to margin. So you have these startups or mid-sized companies, and they're looking to sell their business. They're all about growth, and they want to barely stay in the black, but grow fast, show high levels of growth so that they're attractive to large companies like Adobe. We buy them, and all of a sudden the margins, we try to find ways to maximize our revenue for our stockholders while driving growth. And so we tend to grow those accounts, but we don't continue to grab market share the way we'd like to grab market share. And so, that's the focus of our business, at least my specific business, which is a small piece within a big Adobe pie, right? And how do we solve this problem? And if we can, grow that out. And there's an aspect of cost of sales too related to that. So interesting challenge this year. Is new, and we're all running around crazy trying to figure it out.
That's great. So Travis, please tell us a little bit about your formal education, and also how well has your formal education prepared you for your role as a sales director?
Yeah, I graduated in communications, right? So advertising specifically, that obviously fits into what I do today. Like I spend a lot of time talking to folks internally, unfortunately more internally now than externally. I miss the sales aspects of it and getting in front of customers, which I do still, but I spend a lot of time on internal meetings. So the communications aspect's important. Adobe, my specific piece of the pie is really anything in the digital space that's related to advertising and marketing. And so that's obviously helped out too for the market that I'm in, and the companies I'm selling into and that side. So that's all help. But I'm a big proponent of the other things you learn as you go throughout your education, and the opportunity to interact with people and learn how to have conversations. And I think education, when I think about the most important things, where you can find opportunities to learn to analyze things quickly and to make quick decisions, even if you're wrong, right? Like those are the type of opportunities I find to be most helpful. And then, you think back to the smallest things, right? Like I like learning how to do math and do it quick is important in my role, right? Like it helps me a lot. And so, it's hard to see it in the moment when you're getting your education sometimes. But I look back now and there's lots of pieces that benefit me. And I probably, this happens for everybody as they get further in their career. Like I now wish I could go back and redo my education because I look at all the opportunities I missed. So if you can figure out what those opportunities are early and stay motivated with them, it'll be a huge benefit. So when you're, my age, a really old guy, like you don't have to go back and relearn things.
That sounds great, Travis. So tell us, what are some of the greatest rewards and biggest challenges to being a sales director?
Yeah, so the rewards are, again, I go back to college, like a lot of what sales is risk reward on making money, right? So like I'd be lying if I didn't say that was the number one driver is a company cares about their bottom line revenue and profit. And so, sales plays a big role in that, and they're willing to pay accordingly for folks who can do it well. So, that's what got me into sales. It's there's a ton of pressure behind sales, and it's all performance driven, and so much of the money you make is based off of that. So that's important, right? And not that that's the only important thing. It's not, but that's generally how people get into sales, right? And so what I found is getting further into my career, I find joy in lots of other things. So we talked about especially in management. Like I'm now into solving internal problems. So I have all these people who are trying to go out and close business with our accounts, and my job is to look at what their obstacles are, understand those obstacles, and remove those obstacles for them so that they have a clear path to go and deliver, right? And so, I really enjoy that aspect of it and kind of figuring out how to solve problems. And then the relationships, right? I built lots of friendships and the people I work with across the company and within the customer base. And I really enjoy that. And then specifically in leadership, I really enjoy watching people grow and accomplish their career goals and really progress and move forward in their careers. So that part's a lot of fun too. And I love up and coming talent. I'm a big proponent of, not that, I don't ever hire managers who have been in the business for a long time, but I love seeing someone take that next step from being a rep and getting into management, how excited they are, how hard they work with the new challenges. And so I love that aspect too.
Great. So Travis, tell us about, we talked just a little bit about certification. It's advanced learning. That's normally pretty helpful within different professions. What about sales? What type of certifications, advanced learning should one have?
So there's lots of options there, right? And I'll get into those. But if I'm being honest, the best thing to do with sales is to get into it, right? And you can always get into sales because, again, you're taking on a ton of risk, and any company's happy to have you there to drive revenue. And in some cases, it's an all commission based, so it's completely performance based. So that's the first thing, right? Like, get into it and just do it, right? And I find that if you do that at any level, and you work hard and you do everything you can, you're going to learn different skill sets, and it allows you to kind of pivot into different things in sales. There's a zillion options, and again, it's something every company's looking for and looking for people good. So get started is the first thing. That's probably not different than a lot of careers, right? Once you get into your career and specific to software sales, there's lots of training and books, and I'll get into the books later. But the trainings that I've been through that have been really helpful, one is called value selling, And the whole idea is how do you progress a sales cycle from, being a prospect, the customer being a prospect, turning them into a lead, and then, moving them through the cycle to closure, right? And all the different little learnings along the way and how to manage that process and the methodology behind it. So that's been really helpful. And I think a lot of software companies have adopted something similar to that. There's, a variety of different things, but they all kind of connect together and give you this idea of a methodology, right? So that's one thing. And then the most popular I would say out there right now is the Challenger sale. There's a book and a program that you can get certified in, and I've done both. And so if you're looking for certifications and things to get involved in for enterprise sales specifically, like those are two programs that are really great.
Okay, so Travis, you've been very successful. You've continued to go up the corporate ladder, but tell us, what do you think is some of the greatest characteristics of people that are successful in sales? What does it take to be successful in sales?
Sure. So there's the sales aspect and there's the leadership aspect, and a lot of them intertwine. So the first thing is don't be afraid to fail. Like to my point earlier, jump in, right? And sales is all about failure. You expect to fail in a high percentage of your interactions. Like it's just a known. And so that's the first thing. You have to get in and be comfortable with failure and putting in the work and doing all the hard things that relate to that. And what you find quickly is great. Failure is part of life. How do I fail quickly and learn from it, right? So that's the best thing you can do, and that's not just in sales. That's everywhere. The software we sell, like half of the purpose of it is how do we learn what we're doing well and learn what we're doing poorly and quickly stop doing those things we're doing poorly and adjust, right? No different, right? Fail, analyze quickly, figure out what you can do better and learn from it. So I think that's the foundational thing in sales, and I think that probably stems across lots of professions. So that's the first thing. Problem solving, as I mentioned, again, that idea that I mentioned in education, and I also mentioned a second ago, but analyzing problems and solving them quickly, not complaining about problems, right? Like every company and every customer is looking for you to diagnose problems and offer solutions, right? So it's super easy to say, hey, I got all these problems and I don't know how, I don't know how to solve this, so I'm just going to complain, right? But no one wants to hear anyone complain about anything. They want to hear what your solutions are, and that's helpful, right? That drives a business forward, that drives a customer forward. And so becoming a problem solver is huge, right? And that's in all aspects of sales all the way up the chain. I think integrity and humility lead to an opportunity in leadership, right? I think that's the key thing in building culture and making putting you in situations where people want to work for you and trust you and will do anything for you, right? And within that, like as a leader, I think a subservient philosophy is the right one. So I see a lot of folks who learn to get into leadership and manage up really well, and they forget about managing down. And it's really important to do both and to be available to your people on the front lines and to be able to manage the other side. And in order to do that, you have to be humble and willing to work with people and take feedback from everybody. So I think that's really important.
Okay, so Travis, it sounds like you got into your company initially with Omniture through networking. So how important is networking for a young person that's getting ready to graduate from college or even go into the trades industry? How important is networking to you?
Yeah, it's really important. In fact, the advice I give most often to people who call me, talk to me, and work for me, when they ask how do I get into things and grow in my career, right? The answer is you add value in every interaction that you have, right? If you can create create value in every conversation or relationship that you have, then you leave people feeling positive, right? And if you leave people feeling positive, doesn't matter if it's in college uh, or all the way up the chain, then that creates a real network that you can work within. And you never know who the next person who your next boss is going to be and who they're going to call to ask about you, right? And so I can't stress it enough. And I know it's hard because lots of times you might have conflict in a relationship, but even in conflict, you can leave feeling like there's value add and coming to an agreement on what the best option to move forward. And if you're productive like that, then when you get into LinkedIn and you start doing all this networking, like people never forget who you are. I had people who worked for me 10 years ago, or that I worked with 10 years ago when I was in the very most entry level jobs in sales, that like I still reach out to when I have an opening and I want to grab them, right? So there's all the networking that goes along with it, and you should be reaching out, and that's scary too, like reaching out and touching base, but you should be confident in that. And then you should learn how to add value. When you walk away from an interaction where you don't feel like you add value, you should analyze it and figure out how to add value the next time. And that creates a huge network, which creates opportunity.
So Travis, you've talked a lot about adding value. You've talked a lot about bringing solutions to your clients, your customers. So how important is the discovery in bringing solutions?
Yeah, I mean, without discovery and learning to listen, you can't understand what the challenges are to bring solutions forward, right? So it's it's the most important step in being able to solve problems is listening and understanding.
Okay. And so we talked a little bit about different sources, either websites or books or periodicals. Can you give us some recommendations for those individuals that may be exploring a career in sales and would like to learn more?
Yeah, so the Challenger Sale I brought up as kind of a program, but there's also a book to get you started. That's probably the most popular book in enterprise sales over the last 5-10 years. So that's by Matthew Dixon and Brent Adamson. So that's one book. And then the other book I really like in sales, without overloading anyone, right, is Never Split the Difference. So that's a negotiation book by Chris Voss. And that one's really interesting. So check that out. And then from a leadership standpoint, an oldie but goodie, right, is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think Stephen Covey wrote that a long time ago. It's still applicable today and excellent. And then there's 2 more I really like that I've read recently: Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. It's a fascinating book about leadership and taking ownership and responsibility, and they learned it in the armed forces, and a really great book. And then Principles by Ray Dalio is another one I read recently that is excellent, like taking examples from a company, sharing his experience in that company and how being principle based drove success, and so many of those cross over into management are great. So those are a few recommendations, Scott.
Thank you. So Travis, you have a beautiful wife, you have 4 children. Tell us about how you achieve balance in your life, and what are the areas that are important to you in that balance?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't do it perfectly, right? And I think figuring out where your priorities are and making sure that those come first is certainly the most important thing, right? So I spend all day talking to people on calls and doing those things. So if I work 10 to 11 hours often in the day, or I'm traveling, then the really my top priority, the thing I'm doing that for is my family, right? I as much as I love to work and love my job, like ultimately I'm trying to give my family a solid footing and make sure that they're taken care of, and that's why I work, right? So So I can't lose sight of that. Like, I need to come home, and I have 4 little ones, and I need to, make sure my wife stays sane, because she does a much harder job than I do, because she's chasing those kids all day. And by the time I get done with the weekend, I'm like, get me back to work. And so for her to do that 7 days a week is crazy. And so it's, how do I get quality time with my kids and also give my wife relief? And by the end of all of that, like, I have nothing left to give, right? So it's important for me that the next priority is like making sure that I have a stress relief, and that becomes working out. And I make sure I get up early every morning and go do that, and it keeps me healthy and relieves stress and allows me to kind of take on that next day and the stress that goes on with it. So balance is really important. I could always do better, and I look for ways to do it better. I find peace in religion, obviously, too, and I try to make time for that. But there's only so much time in the day, so pick the priorities. Make sure you're doing things that that enable you to go out and be efficient and get the things done that you need to get done. But you have to have balance and figure out what those things are, and bring that balance to your life.
So Travis, periodically you have to be on the road and away from your family. So what are things that you would recommend, you would tell people in this similar situation? How do you stay connected with your family when you're on the road?
Yeah, so I mean, I talk to my family all the time when I'm on the road. But here's my secret, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. I work like 15, 16 hours when I'm on the road, because that means I have to work less when I'm back at home, right? Like, if I can knock out as much as I can. So I often get up, I still work out as much as I can. I usually start working around 8, and I'll have to do some type of customer dinner or whatever. I'm not back to the hotel until like 8. And then often I'm on email and working until 10 or 12 at night, and then I get to bed, right? And the whole purpose of that is I know that, 2 days from then I'm flying home at 6 a.m. and I'm going to get back into Utah, and I'm going to have to work, but then I can be done at 5 o'clock that day. I can get home, and be with my family, and as much as I can lock in with my family. So it's not, the most fun solution, but that's the life I live, and I have to live to give as much as I can to my family.
So Travis, last question. Is there any other career advice that you'd like to offer young adults? You're getting ready to start. We're either exploring different careers, or we're ready to jumpstart that career in a profession that we've chosen. What other advice would you give to them?
Yeah, and I've hit on those, Scott. Like, I find that there's principles I live by, and I've touched on them, right? So the idea of hard work is a given, right? If you want to be successful, you want to grow in your career, that's a given. But the idea of getting started, which I touched on, just getting into it, right? Making sure you add value in those interactions, and then just do hard things. Like, make that a mantra and something you believe in. Like, I'm going to do hard things. I'm going to take on challenges, and that's going to lead to growth. The one that I haven't mentioned that I think is really important is just believing in yourself, right? So, like, I have a son who's 9 years old, and from the time he was 3, we got him into soccer, but he was really, really challenged in soccer early on. And we didn't, it was just really light soccer at 3, where he's just running around with friends, and it was crazy. But he dealt with a lot of anxiety, and he would often quit and run off the field. And I almost threw my hands up at one point and said, because we're not forcing him to do anything. So it was like, do you want to do soccer? He kept saying, I want to do soccer. And he always kind of struggled in that. And then one year when he was 7, we started playing in this league, and he said, Dad, I'm the best soccer player on my team, which shocked me, because he wasn't, right, from my experience. And I said, okay, that's awesome. I was like, what makes you think that? And I don't know where his self-belief all of a sudden came from, because he hadn't had that before. And he said, well, I just think I am. And I said, well, if you are, you have to show it in this way, and this way. And he went out the first game of the season. I can't tell you how shocking this was for me. And he just went and scored 3 goals in his first game of that season. He was the best player on his team ever since then, right? And it was all about self-belief. And it's no different in your career. Like, you've got to go in and you're going to fail, and you can't let that get you down. And you have to believe that you can be what you want to become, right? So have self-belief and don't let anyone tell you you can't accomplish anything. And, eventually that'll become the reality. So those would be the things I would advise.
Right. Well, Travis, we want to thank you for the time that you've taken with us today to offer career building advice for the up and coming generation. Uh, we've learned a lot today, and you're definitely a rock star. So to wrap up the video, we'd like to recommend our viewers or remind our viewers that if they're interested in learning from a professional, if they're interested in exploring a different profession, they can reach out to different professionals on their own to schedule informational interviews, or they can ask for an introduction from someone that they know that networks with a lot of professionals. We recommend that in order to learn about how to do informational interviews, you can watch the video on this website titled Conducting Informational Interviews. And again, Travis, we want to thank you. And it's been great learning more about your profession and your family and the tools that you utilize to be successful. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Scott.